What should we all make of this moment in American politics? For an outside-the-box view, we have my friend Michael Malice with us now. He's the host of You're Welcome with Michael Malice. Here he is. Michael, we are all girding our loins and preparing for what analytic bombs you plan to drop here.
Yeah.
What is happening right now in America as you see it?
This is what Reagan was talking about. It is morning in America. It is a beautiful day because whenever you have the state and the ruling caste demonstrate its weakness, this is a very, very healthy thing. You could listen to corporate media all day long. They will never be able to persuade you that a government which can be kind of taken over by someone from Burning Man who goes up to the speaker's desk and just drops his genital on her table and flexes for the cameras, that this is an empire in its prime.
So you think that what we're seeing is a recognition of American decline because of the downfall of opinion around the elites?
No.
Is that fair?
Government decline. America is healthy insofar as the government is weak. I hate this government because I love my country. And for a year now, these despicable, depraved, degenerate class of people who should be in Gitmo as a compromise have been making it illegal to earn a living and to leave your home while they sip and laugh on champagne. So yes, anything that shows that the emperor has no clothes, and emperor as a word I use very specifically, is enormously useful because that demonstrates they do not have the will to back up their edicts. What happens now could get very, very ugly, but what we've been going through has been uglier still.
What do you think? I mean, I agree with you on the lockdowns, and I think one part of the conversation that hasn't really gotten nearly enough attention in the last few days even was how many people that were in D.C. for the march, not the riot, but for the march, were outraged about that. We've been in a truly, people always overuse the term Orwellian, and I know it becomes such a cliche and it's overused. But when you can't go into an elevator without being told where to place your feet, literally place your feet in the elevator because there's little foot pads, and if you don't do that, you're supposed to be a reckless or a bad person. We have entered a crazy town world of morons running every aspect of our lives while they don't actually do any of this stuff themselves. People are rightly very angry about this. And no one can look at what's happening in California and other places across the country and think that the trade-off that these elites insisted on, we didn't even get a choice in this, was don't worry, we'll keep you safe. Just let us tell you what you have to do. Let us make you do all these idiotic things all the time. Mask up between bites. Didn't save us. I think people are recognizing this now.
2 weeks to flatten the curve. Remember? 2 weeks. This is just going to be 2 weeks, and then it's all going to go away. I wouldn't call it a riot. Even a riot, we've all seen. If I'm playing Pictionary with you, and I want to draw the word as a riot, burning cars, fires, cars tipped over, people screaming. The Dasani bottle in the speaker's office wasn't even knocked over. This was a tour, a privatized tour. This is the one time the government had a no-knock raid, and the only people who were hurt, a few people were killed, which is horrible.
There was a Capitol Hill police officer who was killed, apparently hit over the head with an extinguisher.
And a girl was murdered. A veteran was murdered by the police, for which I'm sure they're going to have no consequences because they can kill with impunity. But
I think there won't be consequences. And I got to tell you, just real quick, Mike. I've spoken to some people that I know in law enforcement and former law enforcement who are very much not. You wouldn't agree with them on use of force. I think generally, even they say, "Why was this woman shot in the neck? What's the justification for shooting?" I mean, yeah, it was an unruly crowd. Could you just open fire and shoot everybody who was at that door? If not, why not? I don't understand how this was a good shoot, as they say in law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to get into the cops because that's going to be a whole other sidebar. But here's the other thing. The left was told for a very long time that Donald Trump is the head vampire, like in a movie. And when you destroy the head vampire, all the underling vampires dissolve into dust and the sun rises and it's the dawn. Joe Biden is not going to be able to stop this. Donald Trump was barely able to stop this. I've said this before. They thought he was the river, but in fact, he was the dam. Because for a large segment of the population, tens of millions, he gave them hope that they would have some sort of representation in Washington and their voice would be heard. Now that that has been extinguished, and now that they are being marginalized systemically by the corporate press and by the DC establishment, they are not going to be quiet and go home. They are going to get more and more angry. They have very little to lose as their businesses are being destroyed. And historically, the left has understood this. When you marginalize a community and give them nothing to hope for, they're not going to just start playing Parcheesi. They're going to get aggressive. They're going to get violent, especially young males, and it's going to get very ugly very soon. And I mean like Rosa DeLauro ugly.
Rose, please explain. Rosa DeLauro. What
she's the congresswoman for Connecticut. Google her. She's looks like she should be in Jabba's hut.
So we're speaking to Michael Malice, who is the host of Your Welcome with Michael Malice, and Mike, I also have a feeling, and we're seeing the early stages of this. They're lying to us, right? We know that there's a lot of lying that goes on, and I'm very angry with the people who are telling everyone, "Oh, don't worry, the Kraken is coming. We've got any moment now. We're going to unleash." And there were some big names that were far too willing to pretend that any second now they're going to overturn the results of the election. It was not happening. Okay, we lost as soon as the press, as you say, the corporate press, which I actually think you're right in that terminology. As soon as the corporate press called it for Biden, it was effectively going to be over. I mean,
especially because there's no will within the Republican Party to fight them. That was the issue. The Republican Party weren't going to go to bat for Trump because Mitch McConnell is perfectly happy working with Joe Biden, as he has for decades.
So what would be going to bat for Trump under the circumstances within the system? I know you're an anarchist and you're open about that, but if we are going to work within the system, just take that as a given for the purposes of our conversation. What would you have liked to have seen them do?
You would say that what did the Democrats do in the media for the last 4 years about Russia? Insist that the election is not certified, fight it every step of the way, have hearings, have crowds, rile up the Republican base. That would be what fighting, even if I agree with you that they lost. But what I'm saying is if they wanted to go to bat for Trump and for these people who feel disenfranchised, this is what they should have done. And as an anarchist, I don't regard any vote or any election as legitimate anyway. So, yeah, it's absolutely would be a disingenuous, but just as disingenuous as democracy is inherently.
So can you explain that? I'm actually just curious. I always find your philosophy interesting because, you say things that you just don't hear from other people in the media who actually, are out there and talking about these issues. Democracy is problematic for you. And I'm really asking, I'm actually just curious. What do you mean?
I'm not saying problematic. It should be strangled in the crib. The idea that I can't be governed by who I want, that I have to be governed by someone whose views I despise, who does not represent me or my culture, is something so nonsensical that the only reason we accept it as a hypothetical is because we've been trained to the contrary since kindergarten. If I despise Donald Trump and I think he's a white supremacist and I think he's implementing fascism in America, why am I supposed to regard him as my president? Same with if I think Joe Biden is a tool of China and he's a corrupt swamp demon, this guy doesn't speak for me. Why? Because people who are my neighbors like him. Who cares? They don't get to choose my doctor. They don't get to choose my lawyer. They don't get to choose where I eat at a restaurant. So it makes no sense that they're going to determine under whose jurisdiction I'm going to fall under, just because we're geographically proximate.
What could we replace that aspect of the system with?
That's why you destroy that system, because politics is something that is not defensible morally, and that's where anarchism comes in. There's no reason for the government to have a monopoly on security for the same reasons there's no reason for the government to have a monopoly on healthcare. So every argument against socialized healthcare is an argument against socialized security systems.
And I was also going to add that was just I just wanted to know, Michael, and that's interesting. You won't hear from a lot of anarchists in the media, my friends. So Michael is one of the few.
Well, that's by design. So Noam Chomsky, who's also an anarchist, but a left anarchist, he made the point that the way that people establish control is to allow healthy debate, but within very delineated specific terms. So if it goes between 2 and 3, and yes, there's infinite numbers between 2 and 3, 2.1, 2.8, whatever, but 4 and 1 are never on the table and never discussed as something to be regarded as realistic. And then you can strictly maintain the future of the country, which has fallen away thanks to social media.
I was going to say, that brings me back to what I was going to ask you, which is I believe, so I was early on in saying to people that the lockdowns are not going to go away with Biden. They will actually, and also all these Democrats in states like New York and California, they will double down. And as they have more power, they'll want even more power on top of that, because this suits their philosophy of who they are and what they should be able to do and tell people to do. And they like the power. People in power like even more of it. It's almost always the case. And what we see with the social media companies and the suppression, an open suppression campaign of wrongthink, to borrow another term from Orwell, they're going to do more of this, not less, now that they think that the corporate approved candidate is in office. This is not going to get better now. I think this is going to get worse.
Yes, and I think we have a model to choose from, and that is a prohibition. Prohibition stopped when there was disapproval of it, but it also stopped because people started getting violent. If you look at a chart, and this was horrible, the number of police officers who were killed went up and up and up, and then prohibition ends and it goes back down again. So at some point, we're already seeing in Scotland, we saw it in Canada. I don't know if this reached the mainstream desk, but you could see it on social media. Police officers started raiding people's homes. And I don't mean like someone who's a drug dealer or, running some kind of cockfighting ring. I mean, elderly people in their homes, they're knocking down, breaking down the door and coming in. At a certain point, they're going to do that to the wrong person, and things are going to start popping off in a very, very bad way. And this is something that you would think people in power would understand. But since they're not the ones who are in danger, they have no problem putting police officers in harm's way. It's going to get very, very ugly.
I have some very smart friends who, just very bright people who are good people, and they're asking me questions, expressing what they view as very real concerns. Like, I mean, they think they're going to. You mentioned, and I've seen the video in Canada. It's particularly horrific. I mean, they're sending in police to drag people out of private homes for the crime of being with their family members in a private home against the will of the state. It's appalling. And if we had an honest media that wasn't a bunch of hacks for the Democrat Party, they would make a much bigger deal of this. I have people in this country asking me things like, do you think they're going to come after? They're going to go and they're going to start with probably assault rifles, but they'll go down from there, or, whatever, semi-automatic rifles that have cosmetic features they define as assault rifles. They're going to go house to house and take people's guns. I say, I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think it's going to happen. Can I tell them it won't happen?
Oh, I mean, people need to this is the anarchist perspective. The government will take as much power as it is able to get away with. It's not going to be stopped by petitions or Facebook updates. It's going to stop when the state and its enforcers realize, if we continue doing this, we are going to suffer personal consequences for what we're doing. And I think that is the point where people are reaching already. And I think that's a very, very, I had this tweet, I was going to say that they're playing with fire, but they did all summer and spring, literally, sat on their hands while cities burned, and then told everyone this is the voice of the unheard. And too bad you have insurance, even though your business you've built for 40 years has burned down in flames overnight.
Michael Malice, everybody. You're right with Michael Malice, or yes, you're welcome. Sorry. You're welcome with Michael Malice. I'm right. But you're welcome. You're welcome, Michael. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Buck. Always a pleasure.
Hey, Team Buck. Thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.